I knocked on the door of my own house. A man answered. Behind him, a child in the hallway. A woman's voice from the kitchen. The settled, unhurried sounds of a family completely at home. He looked at me. "Can I help you?" "I own this house," I said. 3 seconds of silence. "We've been renting it," he said slowly. "From Mrs. Calloway." "Mrs. Calloway? My mother-in-law. $1,400 a month? 22 months? My key? My deed? My grandmother's house? Her account? I'm a contract attorney." "May I come in?" I said. "I think," he said, "you'd better." Prologue. What this house was. Before the story, I need to tell you what this house was, because if you don't understand what it was, you won't understand what it cost. My grandmother, Eleanor Marsh, bought this house in the summer of 1987, with cash she had saved herself over 30 years of work. She was 62 years old. She had never borrowed money in her life, not for a car, not for furniture, not for anything. She believed, with the specific conviction of a woman who had grown up watching her own mother lose things to debt, that you did not own something until you owned it completely. No mortgage, no lien, no cosigner. You paid, you owned, you kept. She paid $87,000 for a 3-bedroom house on 2 acres in a small town 4 hours from the city. She registered the deed in her name alone on a Tuesday morning and drove home and made dinner and did not tell anyone until she called my mother that evening and said, "I bought the house." She spent the next 15 years building the garden. Not designing it, building it. The distinction mattered to her. Designing was something you did on paper in advance. Building was something you did with your hands over time, making decisions plant by plant and season by season, understanding that a garden is not a finished thing, but an ongoing conversation between a person and a piece of ground. She planted the roses in 1988. The lavender along the south wall in 1994, when she read somewhere that it kept certain insects away from the vegetables. The apple tree in the corner had been there before her. She had simply kept it and learned its habits. The way the fruit was sour in August and sweeter after the first frost. I spent every August of my childhood at that house from the age of 6 to 21. 15 summers. The specific, formative texture of a childhood organized around a particular place. The screen door that made the same sound every time. The kitchen table, where she read in the mornings. The bench at the back of the garden where she sat until the light was gone, book in hand, in the specific piece of someone who has built the place they are sitting in and knows it as their own. She died 6 years ago at 83. Quietly, in the way she had lived, without drama, without debt, without loose ends. Her affairs were in order. Her will was specific. The house went to Claire, not divided among the family, not sold and the proceeds distributed. To me, specifically and deliberately to me, with a note in the will that said, in her handwriting, "Claire will know what to do with it." I transferred the deed immediately, had it assessed, $340,000 at current market rates, a number that had been climbing steadily in the years since she bought it, insured it, registered it, paid the property taxes, which came due every November from my personal account. I set up an automatic payment so I would never miss them. The deed had my name on it and no one else's. No mortgage, no lien, no co-owner. My grandmother's logic, inherited along with the house. Part 1. The 2 years. I visited the house twice in the 2 years before the door. This requires explanation, because I think if you are someone with a beautiful inherited property 4 hours from the city, you might wonder how a person visits it only twice in 2 years. The explanation is not interesting. It is simply true. Work was relentless. I was building my practice, taking on more clients than I should have, working hours that I have since significantly reduced. The drive was 4 hours in each direction. Every time I planned the trip, something came up. A client emergency, a filing deadline, a weekend that was supposed to be free and then wasn't. 2 years passed the way that time passes when you are not watching it. The first visit? A weekend, 18 months before the door. I drove up on a Friday evening and arrived after dark and opened the house and aired it out, the specific, slightly musty air of a closed space in autumn, and walked through every room and made sure everything was intact. It was. The garden had grown wild in some places, the way things grow when there is no one to tend them, but the house itself was exactly as I had left it. I spent 2 nights. I walked the garden on Saturday morning. I sat on the bench. I felt, for the first time in months, completely still. Then I drove home and went back to work. The second visit, 8 months before the door. I arrived on a Saturday afternoon to find the front door locked with a lock I didn't recognize. Not the lock I had always had. A different one, installed recently by the look of the hardware. I called the property management company I used for occasional maintenance. They sent a new key. I assumed it was routine. A lock replacement? Perhaps a security upgrade, the kind of thing a management company does. I did not question it. I went inside, spent 1 night, drove home. I did not return for 8 months. If I had gone back sooner, I would have found them. If I had asked more questions about the lock, I might have found them earlier. If I had done any number of things differently, the 22 months might have been 12, or 6, or 0. I did not do those things. 8 months later, on an October Friday when a friend's wedding was canceled, and I had 2 unexpected days and the specific restlessness of someone who has been meaning to go somewhere for a long time, I drove north. Part 2. The driveway, 4 hours. The route I had driven 40 or 50 times over the years. The highway north, then the state road, then the turn at the gas station that had been there since my grandmother's time, then the lane through the old oaks she had planted herself in 1990 and which now arched overhead like the entrance to a different era. I turned into the lane and drove slowly. I came around the last curve and stopped. 2 cars in the driveway, a family sedan, dark blue, current model. A smaller hatchback, silver. Both clean, both parked with the easy, habitual familiarity of people who park in this spot every day. I sat in my car and looked at them. My mind ran through the possibilities the way a lawyer's mind runs through possibilities, quickly, in order of probability, eliminating as it went. The property management company using the driveway. Unlikely, they would not leave personal vehicles. A mistake, someone turned around. No, both cars were parked deliberately, parallel. The parking of people who know exactly where they leave their cars. Squatters. Possible. But the cars were too new and too clean. Renters. Renters. I got out of my car. I walked to the front door. I knocked. Part 3. David. He opened it after 15 seconds. 44 years old, I would learn later. At that moment, simply a man in a gray sweater who had the specific, unhurried quality of someone opening the door of a home they entirely expect to be theirs. He saw me. He waited. I own this house, I said. 3 seconds. I counted them. The specific 3 seconds of a person's understanding rearranging itself around a sentence it was not prepared for. We've been renting it, he said. From Mrs. Calloway. How long? I said. 22 months, he said. And the rent? $1,400 a month, he said. First of every month, into her account. I looked past him. The hallway of my grandmother's house. The wooden floor she had laid herself in 1992. The coat hooks she had installed at exactly the height she wanted. The small table by the door where she had always kept a bowl for keys. The bowl was still there. It had different keys in it. I'd like to come in, I said. He stepped back. I think you'd better, he said. Part 4. The kitchen. He made tea. The instinct of a man trying to hold a situation together through ordinary gestures, filling the kettle, finding cups, the deliberate domesticity of someone who needs something to do with his hands while the ground reorganizes under him. I sat at the kitchen table. my grandmother's kitchen table, the same one she had eaten breakfast at every morning for 15 years. The chairs had been reupholstered, different fabric, but the table was hers. The proportions of it, the particular way it sat in the room. His daughter appeared in the kitchen doorway, 8 years old, in socks, with the calm and curious face of a child, in a place where she feels completely safe. "This is Lily," he said. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I said. She looked at me for a moment with the frank assessment children perform, and then disappeared back into the house. His wife came home while the kettle was boiling. Min Park, 39, a graphic designer, working remotely 3 days a week. She came in through the side door, the door my grandmother had always called the real door, the front being for visitors. She came in with grocery bags and stopped when she saw me. David explained in 4 sentences. Min set the grocery bags on the counter. She sat down at the table. She looked at me with the expression of a woman who has just understood something large and is deciding, in real time, how to respond to it. "What happens now?" she said. "I need to understand what happened first," I said. "Can I see the lease?" David got it from a folder in the kitchen drawer, the drawer where my grandmother had kept her recipes. Part 5. The lease standard residential rental agreement. 2 pages, professional template. At the top, the property address. My address, my grandmother's address. Landlord, Patricia Calloway, authorized agent. I read those 3 words twice. Not owner. Authorized agent. The precise, deliberate language of someone who knows she is not the owner and has constructed a document that does not claim she is, while implying she holds authority to act as one. Someone who had thought about how to write this. Someone who had chosen the words carefully. Rent. $1,400 per month. Payment to an account number I didn't recognize. Patricia's account. Security deposit, $2,800. Move-in date, 22 months ago. I turned the lease over and wrote on the back in my own handwriting. $1,400 times 22 equals $30,800. Security deposit, $2,800. Total received, $33,600. $33,600. Collected from this family. Living in my house. My grandmother's house. Every month for 22 months. Into Patricia's account. While I paid the property taxes every November from my personal account, maintaining a property I believed I owned without interference. A property I had visited twice in 2 years and found, on both occasions, exactly as I expected. Because the family living there had no reason to be visible to me, and every reason to remain invisible. I put the lease on the table. "I need copies of everything," I said. "The lease, all payment records, every communication you received from her about the property." David had everything organized in the same kitchen drawer. He was, I would discover, a systematically organized person. The kind of person who keeps records not because they anticipate disputes, but because it is simply how they live. He printed 22 months of bank transfer records, every payment time-stamped. Everyone to the same account. He printed the 3 emails Patricia had sent over the course of the tenancy. One at move-in with instructions about the garden, one about a plumbing repair she was arranging, one wishing them a Merry Christmas. I looked at the Christmas email. Patricia wishing my tenants a Merry Christmas. In my house. For Christmas of the year before last. I saved everything to my phone. Then I looked at both of them, David and Min, who had poured the tea and was sitting very still. And I said the thing I had decided to say while I was reading the lease. You have done nothing wrong. You rented a property through what appeared to be a legitimate arrangement, and you have honored that arrangement completely. I'm not here to move you out. Whatever comes next will not happen at your expense. Min's shoulders dropped about half an inch. The specific physical release of someone who has been holding something and has just been told they can put it down. "Thank you," she said quietly. I picked up my phone and called Daniel. Part 6. Daniel. He answered on the second ring. The warm, slightly distracted tone of a man in the middle of an ordinary Saturday afternoon. "Hey, are you at the house? How does it look?" "There's a family living here," I said. "Your mother has been collecting their rent for 22 months, $1,400 a month, $33,600. I'm sitting at the kitchen table with the lease in my hand." The silence that followed had a specific quality. Not the silence of someone calculating what to say, but the silence of someone whose entire model of a situation has just been replaced without warning. "Did you know?" I said. "No." The word immediate, unpadded, without the half-beat that would have meant it was constructed. "Claire, I had absolutely no idea." "I believe you," I said. "I need you to call her right now and tell her I'm at the house. Nothing else. Don't tell her what I know or what I have. Just tell her I'm here and that she needs to be here tomorrow morning at 10. "What are you going to do?" he said. "I'm going to let her walk in and I'm going to find out what she says before she knows what I know," I said. "And then I'm going to act accordingly." "Claire." "Tomorrow," I said. 10 a.m. Be here with her." I hung up. Part 7. The evening David made dinner at 6 o'clock with the matter-of-fact domesticity of someone for whom 6 o'clock means dinner. He asked without making it a production whether I was staying. I said I thought I would, if that was all right. He said of course and set an extra place at the table. We ate together, the four of us. Lily talked about a school project on weather systems and a disagreement she'd had with her best friend about which was better, thunder or lightning. Min asked about my work with the careful warmth of someone navigating an unusual situation with grace. David refilled glasses without being asked. Afterward, I walked the house the way you walk through a place that has mattered to you for your whole life. Slowly, without agenda, simply being in it. The living room. David had laid a fire, and it was burning low and warm. The same fireplace my grandmother had used every winter since 1987. The study, her bookshelves, still there, still solid, filled now with different books. Upstairs, the sewing room where she had worked for 30 years, now Lily's room in pink and yellow, with drawings on the walls, and a child's drawing above the desk that said, "Home," in careful 8-year-old letters. I stood in the doorway of that room for a long time. My grandmother had sewn in that room. Curtains, quilts, the specific practical creativity of a woman who made things rather than bought them. The room smelled like a child's room now. Crayon and something sweet. The window looked out on the same garden, the oak tree visible in the same position it had always been. I went to bed in the guest room and lay in the dark and thought about $33,600 and what it requires of a person to collect it for 22 months without saying a single word. I thought about the Christmas email. I thought about the lock I had found changed 8 months ago and had not questioned. I thought about what I was going to say tomorrow morning. Then I stopped thinking and went to sleep, because I have learned over years of legal practice that the most useful thing you can do the night before a difficult conversation is rest. Part 8, 10 a.m. I texted Patricia at 9 p.m. the previous night. Be here at 10. Bring every financial record related to this property. Every receipt, every payment, every bank statement, everything. She arrived at 9:58. Daniel drove. They came up the lane together, and the quality of Daniel's face when he got out of the car told me the 40-minute drive had been exactly the conversation I had hoped it would be. His jaw was set. He carried nothing. He walked beside his mother to the front door, and he did not touch her arm or perform the small gestures of support. Patricia carried a manila folder. I opened the door before they knocked. The small, useful adjustment in Patricia's expression, she had expected to arrive on her own terms. She arrived on mine. I introduced them to David and Min. This was deliberate and considered. I needed Patricia to see the family. Not a concept, not a line in a ledger, but specific people. Min shook Patricia's hand with the composed, unreadable grace of a woman who had decided overnight precisely how she was going to conduct herself. David did the same. Then they took Lily to the garden, deliberately, generously, giving us the kitchen, and the door closed. Patricia and Daniel sat at the kitchen table. I sat across from them. The kitchen was very quiet. "The folder," I said. She pushed it across the table. I went through it the way I go through every financial document, from the beginning, completely, without skipping. Receipts for maintenance work. A plumber for a burst pipe in January of the prior year, $340. An electrician for a wiring issue, $780. A gardening service, quarterly, $200 per visit. Printed bank statements. Incoming transfers from David Park, first of every month, $1,400. Outgoing payments to contractors, noted and dated. And at the back, a handwritten ledger in Patricia's neat, careful handwriting. Income column, expenses column, a running balance updated monthly. Her handwriting, her ledger. Maintained carefully for 22 months. The numbers, precisely: $33,600 received, $14,200 in documented and receipted expenses. Running balance, $19,400. Sitting in an account in her name. I closed the folder. "The $19,400? I said. "Where is it currently?" "In the account," she said. "I've kept it completely separate. I always planned to give it to you. I just wanted to have the complete accounting ready first, to show you everything that had been—" "When?" I said. She looked at me. "When were you planning to give it to me?" I said. "When the timing was—" "When you decided the timing was right," I said. "Not when I asked you for it, not when I found out. When you, independently, determined that the moment had arrived." She looked at the table. "Patricia," I said, "I have one question. I'm not asking it legally. I understand the legal situation completely, and I'll address that in a moment. I'm asking it as a person." I held her eyes. "What did you believe gave you the right to do this?" The silence lasted a full 15 seconds. "You weren't using it?" she said. 3 words. The complete architecture of the justification, expressed in its simplest form. You weren't using it. The logic of a person who saw an unused asset and interpreted non-use as absence of ownership, who decided that because I had not been there, I had somehow relinquished the authority to decide what happened there. "I own it," I said. "I pay the property taxes on it every November. I carry insurance on it. The deed has my name on it and no one else's. My grandmother left it to me specifically, and I have maintained that ownership for 6 years." I kept my voice at the precise, even register I used when explaining legal risk to clients. Not cold, not theatrical, simply exact. Not using something is not the same as not owning it. Not being somewhere is not the same as not being the person who decides what happens there. She was quiet. "You collected rent on my property without my authorization," I said. "You signed a lease as my authorized agent without having been authorized by me. You made maintenance decisions about my property without consulting me, and spent the proceeds of my property on those decisions without my knowledge. You changed the lock on my front door, which I found 8 months ago and assumed was the management company." I paused. "I want to be precise with you about the legal framework. Unauthorized agency, signing as an agent without authorization, renders the contracts you signed potentially voidable. The money collected is legally mine. Retaining it without disclosure is a matter I have grounds to pursue formally." Another pause. "I am choosing not to pursue it formally. I need you to understand the size of that choice." Daniel, beside her, had not spoken. His hands were flat on the table. His jaw was the same as it had been in the driveway. "The $19,400, I said. "I need it transferred to my account today, before you leave this house." "Today?" "You have your phone. The transfer takes 4 minutes." I held her eyes. "Today." Patricia looked at her son. Daniel said, Mom, transfer the money? Not a question, not a suggestion, a sentence with no room in it. Patricia took out her phone. She opened her banking application. She made the transfer. I watched the notification arrive in my account. $19,400. I screenshotted it. I saved it to 2 separate locations before I put my phone back down on the table. Thank you, I said. Then I went through the receipted expenses. Everyone. The plumbing repair, legitimate, necessary, I accepted it. The electrical work, legitimate, I accepted it. The gardening service, authorized implicitly by the obligations of any landlord, I accepted $14,000 of the $14,200 in expenses as legitimate expenditure on my property. The remaining $200, a receipt for curtain fabric, new curtains she had installed in the master bedroom, I did not accept. She transferred that separately, without argument. By noon, the financial matter was closed. Part 9, after Patricia left. She left at 12:30. She said goodbye at the kitchen door. Not warmly, with the specific reduced quality of a woman who has handed back something she had been holding and feels the absence of it. Daniel stayed. He stayed for 3 hours after his mother left, sitting at the kitchen table while I drafted notes, and David made lunch, and Lily came in from the garden with dirt on her knees and a question about whether the apples on the old tree were ready yet. Not until after the frost, I said, without thinking. My grandmother's answer. The words arrived automatically, stored somewhere. Lily looked at me. Grandma Pat said the same thing, she said, and went back outside. Daniel and I sat with that for a moment. She spent time here, he said. Yes, I said. With them? Yes. He looked at the table. I keep trying to understand it, the scale of it, not just the money, the time. 22 months of knowing, of collecting, of keeping the ledger, of sending Christmas emails. She organized it the way she organizes everything, I said. Carefully, with a system. With the sincere belief that she was managing something better than the person who owned it would manage it. I looked at him. That's not malice. It's something harder to address than malice. What is it? He said. The absolute certainty that she sees more clearly than everyone around her, I said. And that seeing more clearly is the same as being entitled to act. He was quiet for a long time. What do you need from me? He said finally. The same thing I always need, I said. Be beside me, not in front of me explaining her, not behind me softening the aftermath. Beside. I told her to transfer the money, he said. I noticed, I said. That was me being beside you? Yes, I said. That was you being beside me. He put his hand over mine on the table. I should have looked more carefully at what she was doing, he said. For years, not just this. We both assumed, I said. She counted on that. Part 10, the new lease. 2 weeks later, I drafted the lease. I did it myself, not because I needed to. I had colleagues who specialized in residential property, but because I wanted to. I wanted to write this document. I wanted every word of it to be mine. Landlord, Claire Osman. My name, my title, my property, clear. Tenants, David Park and Min Park. Property, address. Owned outright by landlord, deed registered, date, no encumbrances. I added that line, the deed line, the encumbrances line, not because it was legally necessary, but because I wanted it there, a statement of record. This is my property, and here is what that means. Rent, $1,550 per month. Market rate. I had researched it carefully. 3 comparable properties in the same area, average rent $1,575. I set it at $1,550 in acknowledgement of the disruption the tenants had been placed in through no fault of their own. I explained this directly to David and Min when I presented the lease. Min said, "You don't owe us a discount." "I know," I said. "I'm choosing to offer one." "Less than fair," she said, "given everything." "Let's call it fair and move on," I said. We signed at the kitchen table on a Tuesday afternoon. Min made coffee. Good coffee. From a machine she had bought for the kitchen, which she had asked me months later if she could keep, and I had said of course. Lily drew a picture of the house with 4 figures in front of it and presented it to me with the ceremony of a child giving a gift that matters. 4 figures. David, Min, Lily, and one more, smaller. "Who's this?" I said. "You," she said. "You live here too, some of the time." I have that drawing in the folder with the lease. Part 11. Patricia. She did not call for 3 weeks. When she did, her voice had been recalibrated. Something quieter, the management dialed back, the warmth still present but underneath it, something more unguarded. She asked how I was. She asked about the house. She asked, using the new grammar of a person navigating changed terrain. "Is there anything I can help with? Is there something you'd like me to do?" Questions, not announcements, not offers that assumed yes. I said I was fine. The house was fine. A pause. "I've been thinking about something you said," she said. "About substitution, about replacing your judgment with mine." "Yes?" I said. "I've been doing it my whole life," she said. "Not just with you, with Daniel, with everyone I love. I thought that caring about people meant seeing what they needed more clearly than they did, and acting on it." Another pause. "I thought seeing clearly was the same as having the right to act. I understand now that it isn't." I sat with that. "That's the most accurate description of it I've heard," I said. "I'm sorry, Claire," she said. "Not for wanting to help, for believing I didn't need to ask." I had not expected it to be that precise. Not, "I'm sorry I upset you," or "I'm sorry it came to this." The apologies that center the feeling rather than the act. She was sorry for the specific thing, for deciding she didn't need to ask. "I know," I said. "Thank you for saying it that way." She came to the house for the first time since October, the following spring. She came through the front door and knocked and waited. Min let her in. She walked through the house without commenting on any of it. She sat in the garden with Lily for an hour and taught her the names of things. The roses, the lavender, the apple tree, and its habits. "After the frost," I heard her say. "That's when they're best." My grandmother's knowledge passed forward through a woman who had found it here and kept it. I watched from the kitchen window and thought about what inheritance actually means. Not just property, not just objects. The things a place holds, the knowledge of how it works, what it needs, when the apples are ready. The things that transfer not through wills, but through presence. Part 12. What the ledger meant. I kept Patricia's handwritten ledger. Not as evidence. The case, such as it was closed. I kept it because it was the most honest document in the whole story. 2 pages, handwritten, neat columns. Income and expenses, updated monthly for 22 months. A record kept by someone who believed, genuinely and completely, that they were managing something that needed managing. I looked at it sometimes in the months after. Not often. When I did, I noticed things I hadn't noticed in the kitchen that Saturday morning. The expenses column. She had not padded it. Every receipt she had given me matched exactly to a line in the ledger. The plumbing repair, the electrical work, the gardening service. She had spent the money on the property, not on herself. The maintenance had been done properly. When I had contractors come to assess the property 6 months later, they found it in better condition than it might have been after 2 years of vacancy. She had, in the way she did everything, taken care of it. This did not change what she had done. Taking care of something without authorization is still taking it. Managing someone's asset without their knowledge is still taking it, regardless of how well you manage it. But the ledger told me something about her I needed to hold alongside the rest. She had not been stealing. She had been, in her own understanding, stewarding. The distinction is not legal. It is not even entirely moral. But it is human. It is the difference between a person who takes for themselves and a person who takes because they cannot stop themselves from managing, from improving, from filling every space that seems to them to need filling. The harm is the same. The person is different. I needed to know which one I was dealing with. Epilogue. The garden I visit quarterly. The drive is 4 hours and I make it every time now. It goes on my calendar 3 months in advance and I do not move it. I stay in the guest room. Min and David have kept it as a guest room, despite having a child in a house with 3 bedrooms and the natural pressure toward space. Min told me once that she had simply decided it was the right thing to do. She said it with the simplicity of someone who has figured out what kind of people they are and doesn't need to discuss it further. On my last visit, a Saturday in early spring, the garden just beginning. Lily walked me through it in the morning before anyone else was awake. She knows the plants now. 2.5 years of living beside them, watching her mother tend them, asking questions, learning. She named the roses correctly, the variety, not just roses. She named the lavender along the south wall and told me her mother was going to extend it further this year, along the fence. She named the apple tree and described its harvest with the proprietary knowledge of someone who has watched it for 3 Octobers. "Your grandmother planted all of this?" she said. "Most of it," I said. "The tree was here before her. She kept it." "She must have been patient," Lily said. "She was," I said. She understood that things take time. We reached the stone bench at the back of the garden. My grandmother had placed it there herself in 1993, carried it from the truck herself, positioned it exactly where she wanted it, facing east to catch the morning light. I sat on it. Lily sat beside me with the ease of a child who has decided this bench is one of the familiar things of her life. We sat there while the light came up. The early spring light, thin and clear, the kind that shows you everything exactly as it is without softening or warmth. The garden around us, still mostly dormant, the first green at the edges. The apple tree in the corner, bare but solid, its branches exactly where they had always been. My house behind us. "What was her name?" Lily said. "Your grandmother." "Eleanor?" I said. She sat with that. "That's a good name," she said. "Yes," I said. "It is." We sat there until the house made the sounds of morning. Daniel in the kitchen, the smell of coffee. Lily's name called from an upstairs window. She got up and ran back across the garden, through the door, into the house. The real door, the side door, my grandmother's door. I sat on the bench a little longer. 6 years since the deed transferred. 22 months of not knowing. 8 months of a wrong lock I hadn't questioned. One afternoon in October, when I knocked on my own door and a stranger answered. And now this, a garden still growing, a family learning its names, a lease with my signature on it, a bench in the morning light. My grandmother left this house to me because she thought I would know what to do with it. I think, in the end, I did. I found out what was happening. I went where the truth was. I sat down at the table. I asked for the lease. That was enough. That was, it turned out, exactly enough.